Welcome everybody to the Success Looks Like Me Inclusion Career Panel. I'm Dr. Jennifer Winward, the founder and CEO of Winward Academy, and it is my pleasure to be with you all today and to welcome our esteemed panelists. Today, we will hear from two professionals in the athletics and entrepreneurial space who both focus on inclusion in their work. I'm going to post a link in the chat now, so just give me 1 second. And if you want to go ahead and load this link, it's going to have a PDF that has the bios for the panelists. So please feel free to read a little bit more about them as they're answering questions and sharing more about themselves and their journeys. Now, kind of in terms of the schedule for today, we're going to first chat with Miss Zarate-Bayani, then we'll talk with Mr. J, and then we're going to welcome them both back at the end for questions with all of you. Now, this career panel is proudly presented by the Carol Kimmelman Athletic and Academic Campus. For those of you who might not be familiar with this amazing project, the Kimmelman campus is going to be a world-class academic and athletic campus serving thousands of students and families from underserved communities. And this is all happening thanks to partnerships with the U.S. Tennis Association, with Tiger Woods and his nonprofit, the TGR Foundation, Disney, ESPN, the incredibly generous Karsh family, and Winward Academy. Now, on behalf of all of us supporting the Kimmelman campus, we want to thank you, right, all of our nonprofit and school partners for collaborating with us on this panel and for participating with us today. So now it's time. I'm going to introduce a little bit of background about your esteemed panelists. As I mentioned, we're going to be joined by Miss Zarate-Bayani. So she has worked as the Chief Marketing Officer of the Los Angeles Rams NFL team. She has over 15 years of marketing experience across a variety of industries and countries, including Japan, South Africa, and the Philippines. She graduated summa cum laude, which means top 1%, with a bachelor's in political science from UC Irvine. And then she got her MBA from Stanford University Graduate School of Business. After we chat with her, we're going to then talk with Mr. J. Mr. J is the principal of Ramsey J. Jr. and Associates. He is a finance executive turned entrepreneur and the author of the best-selling book, Empowering Dreamers to Become Achievers. He earned a bachelor's degree in business administration from Fresno State, where he was also an all-conference track and field athlete. And he got his MBA from the Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth, where he actually got to be his commencement speaker. So as I'm sure you can tell, we have incredible panelists to chat with you today. So we will go ahead and get started. I'd love to invite Ms. Zarate-Bayani to please turn on her camera and microphone and join me. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We're so excited to chat with you. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into the first question. So there are 32 NFL teams, which means at any point in time, there are only 32 people in the world who have this position that you had, right? Who get to be in charge of marketing for an NFL team. So I think I would love to learn, and I know our students would love to learn more. What did that job entail?
Wow, there's so many facets of it. And first thing I will say is that all 32 teams are like individual companies. So they're not run the same. So each actual organization is structured differently. But overall, the responsibilities of marketing generally fall into how do you engage the fan? How do you grow the fan base? And then how do you grow the business from that foundation? And there's so many aspects of that. If you think about kind of all the content you see, the colors, the uniforms, the representation, where we show up, how we show up, the community service events, all of that in some way, shape, or form affects the brand. And as a marketer, we're stewards of the brand and what we stand for and what each of the teams stands for. So there's so many different facets about what we do. When I was running the team, we would think about how the fan experience would be like pre-game, during game, post-game. If you've ever been part of a watch party with your family, what does that look like? Who do we work with? Who do we partner with in order to do some of those things? training camp, showing up, and what is that experience like? Of, marketing has no say whatsoever for what happens on the field. So I would say we work collaboratively with all the other departments in the organization on the business side for everything off the field. So all the players, negotiations, all of that happens on the football side. And then on the business side, we work together across the board with finance, with technology, in order to bring to life that total experience. So when you think about what happens in social media to what happens in broadcast, we all have a hand in that. There's different teams that come together to play a role in that. But it's just like any other business. It's just when for marketing in the NFL, it's about the team. How do you market the team and how do you bring that connection with the team and its fans?
That's great. Yeah, and I know that you have an extensive marketing history, right? You've also worked for Hershey, Taco Bell, Visa, right? You kind of had these positions before you worked for the Rams. So within marketing, and correct me if I'm wrong, right? It's kind of all about creating that compelling customer experience or consumer experience. Can you maybe explain a little bit more? What does that even mean? Or maybe even give an example of one of those compelling consumer experiences that you were a part of creating?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously different for the different industries. I've been fortunate to be able to work with a lot of different industries. And so, if you think about Taco Bell, right? We sell tacos, we sell burritos, but ultimately it stands for something more, right? When you think about Taco Bell versus a Del Taco versus a McDonald's, right? They're all different kind of fast foods that you can go to, but they represent different things. And so that compelling experience is everything from what we represent and how we represent. So if you think about the colors, the look, the feel, the personality, right? So if you go to the different social media pages and you can see the different personalities of the brands, how does that come across? So that's part of that compelling experience to, in the world of Taco Bell, what type of products, what are the limited products that we offer and feature that get folks excited for that time? And then how do you bring that to market? So how do you share that with people as part of the experience? So what type of ads you do, to what type of partnerships we do, right? So at Taco Bell, we partnered with the NBA. And then how do you show up in social media and all those different places? So that's all part of the experience. Fast forward to a different vertical. When I was at Hershey's, Reese's is part of the Hershey's portfolio, so the peanut butter cups. And there was a time when in the Christmas season we would launch Reese's Christmas trees. And when we would launch Reese's Christmas trees, they're kind of shaped like trees, the Reese's peanut butter cup. But sometimes they weren't shaped so nicely, and people talked about it in social media, and not a very nice way. And so you could let that happen, or you could say, how do you show up and how do you provide a compelling experience for our fans? So we turn that negativity around, and in 48 hours, we put out a campaign. All trees are beautiful, no matter what shape, no matter what size. And we had all these influencers come in and start tweeting and coming to our backs and saying, yes, all trees are beautiful. And it was a representation of the values of the organization and our belief system, right? We believe that everyone is beautiful and everyone has something to bring to the table. And so manifesting that to our product and bringing that to life is part of a compelling experience. And then obviously fast forward to when working with the Rams, there's so many, we're an experience organization. And so there's so many compelling experiences that you could bring, but how do we think about enhancing what's happening on the field? So let's say a game, on our last game at the Coliseum, we did a memorial to say, wow, all these great things and all these great memories that happened at the Coliseum while the Rams was playing there. We featured that throughout the game. And then in the end, we had a great fireworks display. And then we allowed people to go to the field for the first time. So at the end of the game, people could actually step on the field and feel that moment and commemorate that moment themselves. So again, each of the experiences are different for the different brands that I've been able to work with, but it's all about connecting and making sure that there's something impactful that connects our fans, our consumers to our product.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's so many people listening going, wow, this sounds so cool, right? To get to be creative, to get to think like a fan, to get to try to create those types of opportunities where they would love it, right? Do you feel like that's a big part of your job, like kind of trying to put on the hat of your consumer and then just trying to brainstorm and be creative about what types of things they would love, and then that's what you create?
Yeah, one of the things I love about marketing is that you're always putting yourselves in your customer's shoes, right? And, at the Rams, it was okay, if I'm an 8-year-old and I'm coming to the game for the first time, what is that like? If I am a 60-year-old who has been a fan for 40 years, what is that like? Right? And how do you connect each and every step of the way? It's always about thinking about someone else's perspective and not necessarily our own. And so, in many ways, I get to be many different people all the time, right? I get to think about, how would they see it? How would they perceive it? What is their life like? What's going on in their head all the time? And what are ways that we could find that connection? So it's really fun, right? Because you get to play that role, and that's part of what I enjoy and part of the magic of the job.
And Mr. Zarate-Bayani, you have a very impressive, educational path and professional path. Could you maybe share things that happened along the way that, motivated you or impacted your drive or your direction?
Yeah, so my mother immigrated here at a young age, and she came with $50 in her pocket, and so we didn't grow up with much means at all. So growing up was always about thinking ahead, right? How do we get past this, or how do we survive this in order to get to the next step? So I've always kind of had that drive to want to make things better, right? Make things better for my family. And then also just make things better because every step of the way, something was better and I experienced more. And I didn't know what I didn't know. And so, one of the things in high school that helped me through, or kept giving me this passion, was experiencing new things. So I would constantly try things that I didn't know I would like, or I didn't understand, um, because I would learn something from it with an open mind. Um, and I was very fortunate in meeting a few great people who I looked up to and who constantly challenged me and pushed me. And I remember in high school, I had a little bit of an edge to me, and so I was quite stubborn at the time and would always push back or would get a little sassy sometimes. But they kept at it, and they believed in me and probably saw things in me that I didn't see myself. And so I was able to be around people that were more confident in me than I was, that allowed me to develop my own confidence.
Yeah, it's interesting because those same sentiments were shared in the earlier panels too, about the importance of having people and mentors and role models who really help you connect with what you're great at, and are just such an important part of helping to nurture those talents in young people. So I'd love to ask you one more question, and then we'll welcome Mr. J. Another thing too that you talk about is this idea of kind of cultural and social insights into brand strategy. So kind of same question, just for us to kind of learn a little bit more about marketing. What does that mean? And maybe also provide an example.
Yeah. Um, Oftentimes, for a lot of the brands that I've worked with, have been fortunate that they're a part of culture. And when I say they're a part of culture, is They'll show up on memes sometimes. They'll help move the needle with regard to what's happening or messages that are out there. People are paying attention. And so it's really important to think about not only how are we as brands part of culture and what's our role and our responsibility, but then also how can we move culture? And in order to do that, we have to understand what's happening. Culture is shifting all the time. And a lot of the signals and the clues about what's happening in culture now is found in social media. And, sometimes you could look at all the reports and all the insights, but it's so outdated already because, culture moves at the speed of light now. And so looking and mining what's happening in social media, particularly with the youth, and for those cultural drivers, so the people moving culture, you're able to kind of see the trends and what's happening and where people's heads are at, and then able to make some adjustments to what we're doing from a marketing perspective, either intentionally being part of that or intentionally looking ahead to say, how can we help influence that? Or deliberately saying, we're not going to be part of that, right? There's some things that are happening that brands have no reason to be a part of. But knowing that it's happening allows you to make those types of decisions.
Yeah, it sounds like professionally in the industry, things do happen so quickly, right? In marketing with social media, and that I'm sure in your job, you're very busy, right? There's always something happening, always something you have to connect to. And has that kind of fast paced been something that you really enjoy? Do you feel like there are ever times that it slows down or?
You have to find a way to compartmentalize, I would say. It's always on, right? Life, it continues to happen, culture continues to happen. But over time, I've gotten better at parsing out, this is family time, this is work time, this is me time. But it is all encompassing, and it's part of what I love about it. I love the fast-paced nature. I love that there's always something new and something new to learn and something new to figure out. For me, that's a driver because I am constantly loving to learn in general. And so it keeps me motivated. It's not for everyone, but that's why there's different types of careers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Well, please don't go anywhere. We're going to welcome Mr. J to chat with him a bit, and then we would love to welcome you back to do Q&A at the end with the audience.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Hello, Mr. J. How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Good, good. Doing very well. Thank you so much again for joining us.
I'm honored to be here and looking forward to visiting with you. And most importantly, our most distinguished VIPs, you students. So I'm looking forward to spending some time with you guys today.
Sounds amazing. Well, we'll jump right in. I know that you have an interesting background and kind of had a significant transition in your professional career, kind of starting in global investment management on Wall Street and then transitioning to have your own company. So can you share a little bit more about that transition, kind of what drove the change, and what did you learn about yourself in the process?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that question. Great way to start the conversation this morning. And some things I think are important to appreciate when you think about a career, and most importantly, career transitions, especially for you students. The things that I think are very important that help me understand what I like to do when I was your age, and then what I began to do when I became more mature or grown up, if you will, were the number one thing I would say is the word passions. And I think we often talk about passions a lot, and I want to encourage you to continue to be okay with having things you really love and enjoy doing. And maybe you don't know how you're going to make a career out of that. Still be okay with loving certain things and developing a passion for them. And for me, one of my passions when I was young had to do with investments, finance, and money and how it worked. I didn't know that I would go on and work on Wall Street or be an investment professional, but I knew I always liked the idea of understanding what money was and how it worked. So that was a passion I had when I was young, continued to nurture that passion, talked about it in school, took some classes in college, went on and earned a graduate degree, and all of a sudden career paths started to open. But it started with the passion when I was probably your age, thinking about what is money, how does it work, how do people make it, how do people save it, how do people lose it? All kinds of questions. I had a passion around money, and that helped to create a pathway towards a career in it. The second thing I really was excited about was analytics. Some may say, I was a quant nerd, or the guy that had the pencil in his pocket and always had the eraser out. And I just always enjoyed analysis, analytics, always enjoyed numbers and how did you kind of add numbers, subtract numbers, geometry, shapes, figures, really starting to understand the analytics behind things that were going on, even as a young person. So when you combine the passion of investments, you combine a passion for analytics, and then my third passion, in case you haven't noticed, I love to talk and communicate and interact with people. And in the business world, they may talk about as relationship management. You enjoy working with people. You enjoy building relationships. They call that business development skills. And when you kind of put those together, investment, analytics, and then people skills, relational skills, it led to a great opportunity to pursue a career in investments. And that's how kind of those passions ultimately came together in my career. So passions are important, young people. Love what you love now and continue to look at how you can take what you love and create some pathways for a career after that.
So speaking of things that you love, I know that you were a collegiate athlete. So can you maybe share a little bit more about what that experience was like, or if maybe, being a college athlete, how did that inform your career? How did that inform your passions?
I love the question, and I'm going to answer it, if it's okay, Jennifer, with a story. Students, if I can tell you a story, I'm going to tell a story about my last race as a collegiate athlete. I was a Division I athlete, ran college in Fresno State. It's a Division I school in the middle of California. If you may not be familiar, in high school, I was an All-American in track. I was one of the fastest high schoolers in the state and in the country. And so I was able to go to college on a scholarship, academics and athletics. My last race was the 400 meters. For those that don't know, it's one time around the track. And I was 3/4 of the way through the race, meaning I was 100 meters from finishing. And the announcer got on the loud screen, students, and said, Jay, that's my last name. Jay is surging to the front and he's going to win the race. And as soon as he said that, students, you heard my hamstring, students, my hamstring. And if you know that hamstring feeling, it hurts as bad as that sounded when I went. And I crumpled to the track, students, and all 7 runners passed me by. And the announcer said, Jay is down and he's not going to finish the race. Students, the number one lesson I learned as an athlete was when that race knocked me down, I was disappointed. I didn't win, but I got up on one leg, students, and I hobbled the last 100 meters of that race on one leg. But you know what that announcer said? He said, Jay finished the race. The one lesson I learned in athletics, perhaps more than any other one, was never get in the habit of quitting. Quitting is a habit. It gets easier the more that you do it. But so is finishing. It gets easier the more that you do it. And so my lesson from athletics is always finish your race. You don't always have to be first, and you don't always have to be the prettiest, but you should always get in the habit of, even when you get knocked down, and it hurts sometimes, take a moment, gather yourself, but get up and make sure you make your best attempt to always finish your race.
I love that. As you shared that story, I just pictured the entire thing in my head and kind of felt exactly, what you would have been feeling in that moment. So thank you for sharing that and for that great message.
Yes, happy to share.
So you got to do something pretty cool when in one of your ambassador roles, you actually gave the opening remarks at the White House when President Obama honored the philanthropic legacy of Ray Charles. I would just love to learn more about that. What was that experience like, getting to go to the White House and to have that great honor?
Thank you. And it remains one of the highest honors and opportunities that I've had in my life. I hope there are other great ones, but that's a pretty special one, having an opportunity to attend the White House and meet the then 44th President of the United States in the East Room of the White House, students, which is right adjacent to where all of the major entertainment productions that you see happening at the White House. I was there. I was right next to the president and the First Lady, Michelle Obama. There's all kinds of pictures on the internet and YouTube. I'm sure you can probably find it before I'm done talking, but it was a fabulous opportunity. And I was given the opportunity to speak and introduce the concert before President Obama came and made official opening remarks. And I'll tell you the story that I had to use a teleprompter, students. And at that time, I had never used a teleprompter, so I didn't know how to use it. And I didn't get to go through rehearsal because they had all of the celebrities doing sound checks and musical checks. So here I am getting ready to give probably the biggest speech of my life. And I didn't get to practice using the teleprompter, which has your lines and your pace of how you're supposed to deliver your remarks. Not exactly the way you want to give the biggest 2-minute speech of your life. No practice. But sure enough, here's what I like to say to you. There are 3 things that experience exemplifies. Number 1, you have to believe that your dream is possible at the highest level. That is in my book that I talked about, which Jennifer mentioned. Believe that your dreams are possible. And I believed even when I was your age that maybe someday someone like me from where I'm from might get a chance to perform on the biggest stage. But if I didn't believe it was possible, you can probably assume it would never happen. So you got to believe it's going to happen. The second P is I worked really hard to make it probable. Probable means it might happen, doesn't mean it's guaranteed to happen, but with no practice, intense practice, it won't happen. So before I spoke at the White House, Jennifer, and more importantly, students, I gave a lot of speeches when there were 10 people, maybe 20 people, maybe 30 people in the room, no lights, no camera, but I practiced like those rooms were like the White House. So when that moment came, I was ready. I didn't wait until the big call came to get ready. And then preparing for the predictable, the last P, believe it's possible, work to make it probable, and then prepare for the predictable opportunity for a breakthrough means when the lights come on and the big stage comes and maybe you don't get all the time to practice, you'll be able to say something like I did that day with no prompter. And it went kind of like this. It is an honor and a privilege to be able to celebrate the life and legacy of one of America's greatest musical icons. We'd like to thank President Obama, the First Lady, and the Smithsonian. And if Mr. Ray Charles, the great entertainer he was here tonight, he will look all of you in the eye and say that tonight, ladies and gentlemen, White House, you got the right one, baby. And I gave that remark just like that, just in front of the president and all of the cameras, and everyone thought it was absolutely fantastic. But it wouldn't have happened if I didn't believe it, and I didn't work, and I didn't prepare, and that moment became a moment that lives forever.
Yeah, that is such an incredible story. Thank you. So all of your stories are so incredible. So thank you for being willing to share those with our students. So what I'd love to do now, because we have so many questions in the Q&A, is welcome back Miss Zarate-Bayani, please. So as she's turning on her camera and microphone, let's see one of these questions, and you guys can jump in if you'd like to answer it, or you can both answer the questions, whatever you'd like to do. So one question that came in, what was the hardest thing in your field that you had to accomplish or perhaps overcome, and how were you able to do that? So maybe Mr. J, do you want to go first?
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you for that question. I will tell you, when I went and had my first job post grad school, I worked at an investment bank on Wall Street. And then my second job, I worked at a big alternative manager. And the first analyst that that firm had hired that didn't have all of the right background and training was myself. So I had to learn a lot of the analytics and the technical skills and the modeling and how to use the spreadsheets. And there wasn't a class in how to do it. So you know the old story, I had to come in early, I had to stay late, and guess what? I couldn't go and watch the Rams play, Ronalee, because I had to go and work sometimes on the weekend. So I had to watch them on television. I couldn't go to the games. So I had to make some of those sacrifice, students, for my first couple of years to help make sure I got those fundamental skills right. But I will tell you that early sacrifice in my career was a great opportunity to make sure that I built the foundational skills on the technical side and analytics. So it wasn't easy to be the guy who was in there early and there late and sometimes missing the Rams games, but it paid dividends as my career moved forward. So be okay with making some of those early sacrifices to get those skills. And I was happy to say now I get to watch the Rams on Sunday.
Awesome. Well, first I have to say I am inspired by you, Ramsey. So I am honored to be part of this with you. Very similar to what Ramsey said. It's those moments where I had a few, to be honest. There were so many, but it was those moments when you're like, I don't know how to do this. I am responsible and accountable, not only for myself, for my team, and for the company to do something really important for the company. And I have no clue, right? So sometimes there were moments where we were transforming whole marketing models. There were other moments where we were in a crisis and it's new for everyone. And so everyone has this eyes wide open, trying to figure out what's happening, what's going on. And yes, the extra hours is so important because you've got to learn. Like, there's no one there to teach you sometimes. And so you've got to have that drive within your own self and confidence to say, I'm going to figure this out. I have no choice. I'm going to figure this out. And to what Ramsey said earlier, I'm going to finish this race no matter what. Okay. And the only way to do that is to figure it out. And some of the lessons I learned along the way is that you don't have to do it alone, nor should you, right? You've got to lean on the team. And part of doing that is building the trust early and knowing that they can depend on you and knowing that you can depend on them. So that when you are in this moment, when you're like, I have no clue what to do, that you can get some clues from your team. And together, you can figure out the pieces that will move the needle forward. And it's scary and it's daunting and it requires a ton of extra time, energy. But in the end, it is what helps us grow. I have grown more from those moments than from the moments where I'm like, I got this. I know this, I got this. And in fact, the biggest energy and motivator for me personally has been when I got through those moments, right? Because you're like, I finished the race, right? But man, those were the toughest times. I mean, the amount of stress and sleepless nights and Googling, if you will, and then, reaching out and picking up the phone or texting someone and saying, hey, I need to pick your brain because I don't know what to do, right? Here's what I'm thinking. But then trusting in yourself and then being vulnerable at the same time. And sometimes, at least for me, I'll speak for myself, that's one of the hardest things for me, right? When you've constantly been able to achieve things, to then be vulnerable and say, I don't know how. It's really, really hard. But it's the moment of growth that has helped me the most throughout my career. And whether you're young still and in high school and trying to figure that out, learning how to be vulnerable while still being confident in yourself to say, even if I don't know now, I will know enough to make it happen. And we all will, right? If you think about where you are today and where you were 4 years ago, the amount that you've learned from 4 years ago to where you are today is tremendous. But you have to be open to the learning. And so, those are the times where I'm like, oh, gut punch. But to pick yourself up and you kind of plow through.
That's great. Mr. J, was there anything you wanted to add? You were shaking your head so much. I have a feeling there's something you want to say.
Yeah, no, first of all, everything Ronalee said, you should run it back and play it again and make sure you received it all. But I would just add that I think, part of what you also want to appreciate is remember that in this scheme that you're running in life, there are so many people who want to see you succeed. And part of what your success is dependent on is developing that network. And so one of the things that I wanted to make sure you appreciate is your network are all the people who are next to you right now, because those are the people that you want to be able to grow together with and learn together with and ultimately succeed in the game of life together with. So getting to know your classmates that are kind of in your circle, but here's what I'd like to also suggest: getting to know some of those people that are in a different circle, getting involved in some other clubs or organizations. You always eat lunch with a certain group. Every now and then switch that group up. Get to know some other people that you don't always get to know. Part of what will help you be successful and manage some of those challenges and growth that Ronalee talked about is getting to know people well and getting to know people who aren't all just like you. But when you find out together, you have a lot more in common with them than you don't. And together, those kinds of people become some of the great allies that you can lean on as you continue to grow and go forward in your journey. So get to know people that are different than you, and start developing that network and that sphere of influence now, because that'll be what'll carry you forward as you go on with your careers and academic pursuits.
Yeah, that's great. And everything you're sharing, I know you're sharing it kind of from this lens that's been in a professional space, but even for students who are applying to college, right? So much of what you're sharing about these experiences you've had, those gut punches when you're like, oh man, I'm going to learn more figuring it out than I am if this was just easy for me, right? Those are the types of stories colleges love to hear about when they're considering applicants for admission, right? So one thing to just kind of share, I know my brain always goes to college and college apps, but for those of you on the call, right, who are maybe thinking about what am I going to write about for my college essay? What's a story that makes me special and defines who I am and my values and what makes me tick, right? Think about these moments that these amazing panelists have shared with you that they've had, and think about what you learned in those situations, because all of those moments really do produce opportunities for such growth and reflection about your values and who you are. So it's just great to always have that lens that you're looking at those things in your life.
I have something to add on the college
Sure.
application. One of the things that I've learned throughout my career and applies is, I mentor a lot of students and colleagues, and one of the things I always say is own your authenticity. And that really applies for when you're applying to college as well. Don't worry about what all these people are saying in their stories. What's your story, right? Because everyone has a powerful story to tell. And each of you has had your own challenges, whatever that is, and you've overcome it. It's part of life. But what is the you that comes out in sharing that moment and that story? Because that's the thing that colleges will remember when they're reading your application. And when you don't bring you to the table in your most authentic and raw self, some of that specialness gets lost. And the distinctiveness of what makes you so special doesn't get to shine. And it's that shine that's going to help make you stand out. And so, whatever that is, whatever that story, and however difficult it may be to share, find a way to share it in a way that brings you, not your mom, not your sister, not your friend, to the table. And that's the thing that's going to pull the reader in. That's the thing that's going to pull that person in and say, yeah, I want you, right? And like, there's something special about you. And so it took me a while to learn that, because I was always thinking about what should I be or how should I be versus who am I and who do I want the world to see?
Yeah, I love that idea of bringing your authentic self and your you to the table. It's interesting too that with your background in marketing, that's your advice, right? Because so much of marketing is creating a brand and what is that identity and who are you and what is your voice and how do you communicate with consumers and what are your colors and all of those things have an impact on people, right? When we think of big brands. So it's interesting because so much of applying to college is also kind of branding yourself and showing who you are and what you care about. So then someone connects with you, right? And goes, ooh, I want you here. Right. So it's interesting that you came around to that perspective and you have so much experience in marketing, right? Because they really are so closely linked. Any other thoughts, Mr. J, or I can move to another question.
Well, I'd love to hear the questions from the students. I can give a quick thought while you maybe pull one, but I think, Jennifer, don't get mad at me, but I'm going to encourage our students on this whole college application thing to earn 3 Fs. Now, before Jennifer cuts off my microphone, I'm not telling you to do that academically. So let me explain quickly. 3 Fs in this case is be a finisher, which I talked about, be known as someone who finishes something. So if you admit me to your college, I'm telling you, my track record is I'm going to finish this thing one way or another. Be known as a finisher. The second F is be the first to do something, but do it in a way that says, I'll make sure I'm not the last. So many of you who may be the first in a lot of ways in your family or your neighborhood or from your school, whatever your first is, be proud to earn the first at something, but underwrite that with the mindset that says, I won't be the last. And then the third, be a founder. Be a founder. And that doesn't mean you have to find a big company with hundreds of people. You could start a club at your campus. You could start a talk group. You could start a financial club. You could start a music group. You could be anything you and 2 people create. Guess what? You're a founder. So be known as someone that can creatively create something. That's a founder. Be known as someone who's going to be the first, but not the last. And also be known as, no matter what, I'm also going to be a finisher. So Jennifer, don't cut me off, but I'm encouraging our students to earn 3 Fs, not in grades, but be finishers, be founders, and be the first. And I think that's another way to supplement your college application as well.
Yeah, that's great. Those are definitely Fs we would encourage. So one more question on here that was asked by a student is about kind of strategies that you've used if you've ever encountered challenges. I know both of you have touched on this already, but is there anything else that you would share, or maybe even that you've seen in young people whom you've mentored? Like, what are skills that you see in them, or what are strategies that they use that you think just really helps them to overcome? What do you like to see in those students? So maybe Ms. Zarate-Bayani, you can start with that question, and then Mr. J.
Yeah, I kind of touched on this, but surrounding yourselves with people that will help you when you're down, right? And there's a common theme here about like not doing it alone. There's the inner drive that we all have, and each of us has that. And of course, we've got to nurture it and we've got to push for it. But no one has to do anything alone. And I know sometimes we feel that way. I know I did for many, many years. I was an only child. My parents were divorced. So mom was working all the time. And sometimes I was alone, like literally alone in high school. But I didn't realize, and it took a while. There are people like Jay said that, Mr. Jay said that want to help you succeed and want to see you succeed. And that is true no matter what. They exist, they're out there, right? And so I think one is surrounding yourself with that positivity, with that confidence booster, if you will, when you have those moments, because sometimes it's hard to pick yourself up when all you hear are your own thoughts in your own head. And sometimes whatever circumstance you had may not be the best. And it's hard to like pick yourself up and say, there's actually a different perspective out there that is also real, right? So that's probably one. Surrounding yourselves and reaching out to, not only surrounding yourselves, but actually taking the time to reach out to people when you're in those moments. And then when it comes to kind of yourself So there's the people around you, but then there's the drive within oneself. When you're kind of stuck and you're like, I know I should, but I'm just stuck and you're not moving, right? Take that step. Mr. J talked about hopping on one foot. You got to take the step. And it's hard and it's painful. And sometimes you're like, I can't do this. Just do it anyway. Do it anyway, because the inertia of just doing it will get you moving in the right direction. And so while those aren't as tangible, they're applicable in everything in life, right? Sometimes you just got to pick yourself up. Sometimes you just got to get up a little bit earlier. Sometimes you just got to take your meds, whatever the case may be, right? Like, it can be a metaphor for so many things, but sometimes you just have to do it, and you take that baby step and it'll get you going to the next step, to the next step. And suddenly that baby step is a leap and a jump and a run. And then you've got the momentum to get yourself going again.
That's awesome. So Mr. J, I'll throw it to you for any kind of final remarks for our students.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm gonna add to that question because I think it was a great question, and give you kind of two tangible kind of things maybe you think about doing, and this will kind of go into your student toolbox. And Jennifer, you know this certainly from your research background, and appreciate this. You can say it much more eloquently than I can, but cognitively or mentally, there's a power in writing. And so one thing I want to encourage our students to do, and English teachers, you should give me a high five here, journal and write, and be okay with documenting how you're feeling about your progress, recording how you're doing, recording how you're feeling, writing personal journal entries. Couple reasons why. Number one, sometimes, as Ronalee mentioned, you may not always have someone that you can go to all of the time. And so in those cases, go inside to yourself and write your own truth about, today was a bad day, didn't go so well, here's how I'm feeling. And if you do that consistently, I'm telling you, as sure as I'm looking at you, that event, that experience comes back, and guess who you can revert back to and say, last time I was here, this is how I felt. This is what I wished I would have done differently. And guess what? You become your own counselor sometimes and affirm that you're making progress. Things are getting better. I'm improving. This time last year, I didn't know how to do it. Now I'm actually figuring it out. So journaling and writing your story as you move forward is a powerful tool to help you overcome some challenges. And then the last one I'll leave you with is, be okay with mastering process more than performance. Be okay with mastering process or practice more than performance. It's always great to see people when they perform and they're doing their thing on a stage, but it's really great when you understand all the things they did off screen or off the stage or off the field, asking them questions like, Ronalee, what exactly did you do before you got the big seat? And what do you do when you're not on the 50-yard line? Because that's where she spends a lot of her time. It's off that stage, not on it. And so being okay with studying process more than performance, and being okay with writing and journaling your story and your truth so you can see that you are indeed making progress. And I have no doubt that you're here because you're going to make it. And we're just here to say, keep doing what you're doing, and we're rooting for your success.
Well, that's an amazing message to end our panel today. So I do want to thank you both just a million times over. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your experiences and your advice with our students. I know some of you need to hop to class to kind of do some reflection work with your teachers, which will likely involve writing and journaling and thinking about those thoughts. So it'll connect back nicely to that advice. And again, thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you both for your time. And hopefully we'll connect with you all soon. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.